Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Creative Goo from our friends at Gooey Cube who sponsor us. I'm Harry, and I'm your host today, and every week, actually, but want to do a sound check. Can everybody hear me okay? Want to make sure that we've got good sound. In the meantime, want to tell you a little bit about this channel. This is Creative Goo, and we are a group of creative people in the tabletop gaming industry, and we do lots and lots of different things in this creative space. We love miniatures, we like scenery, we like illustrations and all kinds of goofy stuff that go along with tabletop gaming, and sometimes adjacent. We've talked to some physical sculptors and people like that that do creative stuff, but that's what this show's all about. And this channel is all about Gooey Cube. So feel free to go to gooeycube.com and take a look at all those wonderful products to play in the most popular role-playing game in the world, sometimes called 5e, as well as join us on Facebook at the Gooey Cube's Den of Enlightenment on Facebook. And you can find me on Facebook at Harry's 3D Sculpting. If you're interested, you can follow me there. You can certainly like and follow this channel here on Twitch. But that's the bulk of the introduction. Let me get to another screen so you're not seeing ads all the time. And I'm trying a new setup. I've adjusted my environment just a little bit. And so hopefully everybody can hear me and we can get started. So I always look for feedback and questions. I'm going to talk about inspiration and how that leads to my sculpting and creating miniatures, specifically about the world of Zyathé, which is the world created by Gooey Cube. So that's what I'll be talking about today. Love to have you guys reach out with questions. Vardeg and Shadowborn, welcome, welcome. Nice to see you, and hope the rest of you are enjoying the start of this show. So let me talk a little bit about inspiration when you're an artist. And I love imagery and pictures and illustrations, history documents, all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of artwork associated with the world of Zyathé, and it's super inspirational, and it gets my creative juices flowing. It's one of the reasons I bought their product. And hey, Geeky, hope you're doing great. And feel free to ask questions. Anyway, I'm talking about inspiration, and Gooey Cube's done a great job of inspiring me, which has gotten me, to do all this work and create these miniatures that I sell that are mostly around the world of Zyathé created by Gooey Cube. So I'm going to jump to my screen if I can get my mouse ready and do this. Like I said, I've got this new setup, so I'm still getting used to it. So this is actually a reverse inspiration. So I just wanted to get the conversation started. And this is art that's associated with these astral worms, and they are from the astral plane, and they've come to Zyathé to wreak havoc and terror on those of us that travel in this world. What's interesting is this illustration is based on a submission of mine for a monster in this world, and I had created the miniatures from an actual photo of a real creature in the world. And I'm going to look for it right now because I forgot to prepare for it. But while I'm talking, I will be using the magic of the internet to see if I can find, let me move this out of the way, to see if I can find this creature. But anyway, somebody posted in the Den of Enlightenment for Gooey Cube, and they posted this Arctic worm. Let's see if, oh, yeah. And let me find this picture, and I'll move this back so you can see it. So this creature here is a real creature that they found in the Arctic, and it has no eyes. It has this weird cilia on its back, on its top and bottom, and these really nasty teeth. But that was the inspiration. So, something frightening. I don't know how big these worms are. Let's see. This is in a bin. in a sync. So let's see if, oh, I think somebody's holding one. I can't get it to click. There we go. So the real Arctic worm, that head is about the size of 2 thumbs or 3 thumbs. So it's not a very big creature in real life, although plenty terrifying. But that, of course, that creature now is a creature in Zyathé. So let me see if I can find it. So here is a render of the sculpt of these things. I put a whole bunch on the screen, and so I sculpted these based on that actual photographs from different angles of this creature, and I made these worms. And as you can see in this drawing, it's almost the size. It's actually a little bit smaller than the real worm when I printed it out, but of course, in miniature terms, that could almost swallow somebody, right? Certainly could bite your head off. So these terrifying things live in the world of Zyathé, and I put them in swarms. So if I can open this, there we go. I turned it into a swarm creature. So here on this base, there's 5 of them, right? So this terrifying creature. So I had done all this work, created these miniatures, was super inspired by somebody posting this real life creature that some scientists found in the Arctic. And based on that, created this sculpt, this print, painted this print up and made it really creepy. And then there was this call for a submission for monsters that we might see on Zyathé. They haven't published a monster book yet, so this one has only been seen in an adventure I created. Well, I can't guarantee that it's not in other adventures, but I haven't seen it. And but this creature's in an adventure I created that I ran at one of the conventions. But anyway, based on my sculpt and my photos of the printout and that submission, an artist took inspiration from that and created that document, that really cool illustration. Let me close all these up. Created this. So from the description of the astral worm, we get this wonderful illustration. So it's the inspiration in reverse. And that was really, really cool for me. I just love that, right? So let me come back here. All right. So I created an adventure for the last year's Genghis Khan called The Search for, what's his name? The character from Red Star Rising. Smedley. So the Search for Smedley, there's an encounter with astral worms. So that's a convention game that I run. It is not in a published adventure I'm aware of, although I hope to see that soon. So that's a reverse inspiration. But look at some of this other art. Another terrifying picture. This is somebody else's monster they submitted. This is a illustration from one of the adventure books that's coming out, may actually be part of the Shadows in Genzikon or Darkness in Genzikon. I don't remember. There's this creature. So all of these wonderful things are inspirational for anybody like me that wants to take that art and take it to another step. Since everybody's hearing me okay, I'm going to ditch my headphones. So this right here inspired me as well. So I made this into a miniature. So if I can find it, I took that this art, and I made this guy. And so it's not the same, right? If I can move this a little bit out of the way, it's inspired by, it's not an exact replica, which is one of the things I like about the art. And so here's what it looks like printed out. He printed out really sweet. So this is the final product of a print based on that inspiration from, whoops, I'm moving things around in the wrong places. There we go. So if I move this, if it'll let me, you can see the inspired art. and my final printout. And then of course when I paint, I have a very particular painting style and come up with results that are associated with that. So here's what he looks like painted up. And so very, very much a clear inspiration from the illustration, from the art that we got from Gooey Cube. So that's one of the reasons so many of my miniatures um, were I use Gooey Cube's name. You reference Gooey Cube, reference the world of Zyathé, because that's where so much of my inspiration comes from. Now, I have been inspired in the past by other things, regular Dungeons and Dragons and other Paizo's Pathfinder art. I love Wayne Reynolds and his work, and so I'm inspired by lots of different things. But I feel like the art direction and some of the unique stuff that we're doing here in Gooey Cube has given me something new to sculpt, something different. So if I expand this a little bit, things like this, I have seen miniatures and other companies do something similar, but again, this feels very unique to me and, makes me think and gets my creative juices flowing. There's this one. I wasn't quite sure. I haven't sculpted this one. Wasn't quite sure if I would. It's an animal hybrid thing that I'm not sure. That it doesn't sing to me, so I haven't made this one. Where that bog troll for sure, and those astro worms. And this is the final illustration of the Catigator. Another great story about inspiration. So there were no Catigators in our world or in Zyathé. And in early Discord meetings and other conversations with a lot of the new members of the GUI family and the GUI den, the topic of Catigator came up. It was intended as a joke, I think, and people made fun of it. And I did some very silly sculpts of putting an actual cat head on an actual body of an alligator, and of course that just doesn't work. But I really like the idea of a catfish alligator hybrid, and this is the artwork that was created, and I created a miniature that actually doesn't look very much like this. Let me show you that real quick, and I'm going to show you some real miniatures in a few minutes and talk about the sculpting part. I have ZBrush up here in just a minute, but here's my creation of the Catigator. And so you can see inspired by both a catfish and an alligator, kind of a hybrid, similar to what the artist did, but different. And that's one of the things I like about Gooey Cube is the art direction strong, but it doesn't hinder an artist. So you can create something really cool, and that's going to be what's used, right? And so Vardeg, originally they were very much cat and alligator, but trying to create some realism in the creature, I went with catfish and the artist went with catfish, and I think that's how it's described in the manual. But the original Catigator was the face of a cat on an alligator. You're absolutely right. And so then I printed a bunch of these because you never find just one Catigator, and so I've got this guy painted up and printed and painted up, and it turned out pretty darn good. And so, that inspiration can really drive you to create. This creature feels, I can't say realistic, but it feels plausible. And I used some of the texture of an alligator, some of the forms of a catfish face, but there's things that a catfish has that are difficult to print. Like you couldn't really have long whiskers. You'd have to add those separately, things like that. And I made them web feet, even though an actual alligator doesn't really have web feet. So I was able to go in different directions and make this fun creature, and was super excited about it. This is one of my earliest projects from a Gooey Cube. Let's see if there's anything else. I've done this creature. This is another one where you have to go with the inspiration, not the actual creature itself. So this is a spider-like creature. I think it's called a chiga, and it's got this body that's made of smoke, and smoke that comes off its limbs, and it's drooling green slime, right? So it looks really cool, really scary, very, very difficult to do in miniature form. So this is what I came up with when I sculpted it. Let me zoom in a bit. And you can see its body is smoke like, but it's a physical object. And so making that moving wispiness is not a simple task. And in fact, the ooze coming out of its mouth looks a lot like what's coming off its back. But he was a heck of a lot of fun. I really enjoyed. He stands. He was very printable. In fact, I ended up printing some in a translucent green resin, and it turned out pretty slick. And so, since it's translucent, you can feel like the smoke like effects. There is a translucent smoky material that I found, but it didn't print very successfully, and it actually caused problems with my printer. So I will never use that again because I hate fighting with my printer. And so you you the limits that I put on myself sometimes limit the output. But and then I painted up one that was printed in a regular material. If I can get it to open, there we go. And so this is where I tried to paint the smoky look, tried to paint the stuff coming out of its mouth in a different color, and he came out really nice. I'm pretty happy with it. And you can see I have a miniature standing next to him, how big this thing is on the table. So I don't know how big it is in game terms, but I made it big. So it's extra frightening as a spider like creature. So, anyway, these are some of the creature inspirations that I got. And one of the things I enjoy about just goofing around in this world. And there's just tons and tons. Like I grab all these images that I like from the posts that Alphinius puts in the den, as well as the PDFs I get in the documents. Like I sculpted this creature, I forget what it's called, a phaeline or something like that. And I made it relatively small, so it's about the size. It's smaller than a halfling. So I think I printed it to be about half the height of a human, so about 20 millimeters or 15 millimeters. But you want to print it a little big so you can paint it and it looks good on the table. Too small and you can't even see it when you're playing with it on the table. And then this is one that I sculpted and had a lot of fun with, this regal fey-like creature, and it turned out really, really good. So it's things like this where you can really get your creativity going. The other thing that you can get inspired by, though, isn't always from this source. Like, people post, a lot of stuff from what they're inspired by and real-time articles they see, like this Arctic worm. The other place that I go for inspiration, besides just search words on, this is images from Google search. So you just say you want to see images and type in your search words and it brings up images. The other place I go is Pinterest. And so, yeah, there's ads that you have to deal with, but for the most part, you're getting images of the things you want. And there's some really, really nice ones in here. I'm going to shrink this down, see if I can find it. No. There's one I really liked of a bat flying so you could really see its wings. Yeah, here it is right here. So this picture right here, well, I'm never going to find this again on Pinterest. And so there's another application that a lot of us use as artists, and it's called Pure Ref. And it's basically a way to capture all the images you have in one place, and you save it as all the ideas around that thing. Now, I'm not going to use this as my idea board, but I'm just going to show you how easy you just grab this image and drop it in PureRef. And now that's there, you can zoom in and take a look at the detail that you wanted, and you can rotate it around and do things, and then zoom out to see the other images you've got. And so it's a really slick tool for capturing and grouping up. So I could get different images of bats, put them all here in PureRef, And then that becomes my reference document for my sculpting. And if you go to any school, any seminar on art of any kind, the instructor will tell you references matter. And to create any kind of uh, uh, grounded art, you want to have it based on something that you've seen. Now, you can break the rules of that, like human anatomy, for example. You can break some of the rules of anatomy, but you can't break them all. And so, the more you know about anatomy, the more references you use, then the better off you're going to be. Let me find a link to that, and so you guys can find this. So, one of the sculptors that I really like told me about this, and a lot of us use it. It's just a really, really nice application. And then I can save it as a project. So I could save it as my bad images or whatever. They're all in PureRef. They're not all hidden. I do have references that I save on a hard drive for other reasons. But if I'm building a project and I need multiple references, um, I would go to the web for that. So, for example, let's say I want to make a knight for my game. And so I might look up references for armor, maybe boots, weapons, shields, and then, maybe faces of knights, right? So if I didn't have one I already had in mind. And then all of those together, I can mix and match. And so what I've seen people do is when they go to that site, they might like just the um, surface of the armor. And so they just want that little square surface area, not the design of the whole armor, just the texture of it. And so you can capture different images that do different things and have a lot of fun with that. So PureRef I use. I don't use it exclusively, but I wanted to go and show you guys some of my process. And so I've shown Pinterest, some Google searching, PureRef. Let's talk about the process itself. So one of the things you get when you work with GUICube are these wonderful, wonderful illustrations. So I'm trying to zoom in so you can see it clearly, but I think this gets the message across. So there's this bard image, and the tagline isn't as important to me right this minute. It's about the bard himself. I just really loved this concept, and I called him the handsome bard. And that's how I sculpted him for so long. He didn't have a name or anything. When I put him for sale on my mini factory, he has a name now, but he started out as just the handsome bard. And it was just, an inspiration for me. And so if I can find him, here he is. Let me tab back to the picture real quick. So this is the illustration, right? So I have a face. I have the fact that he's bare chested, maybe a vest, or it could be something else, but I interpret it as a vest. And then he's got some kind of stringed instrument strung over his shoulder in a casual way. Well, that's all I have. Well, when I'm sculpting, I'm not just sculpting a bust and a face. I'm sculpting a full figure because I want to print it out, paint it, and put it on the game table. So I had to kind of invent the rest. And that's where I'm talking about finding other inspirations. So I got this inspiration that he'd have that stringed instrument over one shoulder and he'd be holding a goblet in his hand. Found some, casual shoes on that, on Pinterest, I think it was. And I based shoes on that. I gave him a sash. And so this is the final version of that character. And as you see, when I scroll around, he's very simple in his design, but it allows you, when you paint him, to do a lot. So his face is probably the closest to that illustration, but it's not exact. I gave him the little goatee, his, interesting eyebrows, and his long curly locks. The other thing, when you're doing sculpting for miniatures that are an inch tall, hair is going to be very stylized. You can't really use hair tools, software tools, to make it look like real hair because they'll never print. I mean, that's just not printable material. And then trying to sculpt every strand of hair, I sometimes do something similar, but when you paint it, you get the really great look of hair, um, even with the stylized sculpting style. And so, how I sculpt wouldn't work very well for a video game, or definitely not for any kind of entertainment, TV or movies, but it works great for miniatures. And that's really what I'm trying to do here. And I made the other thing to be aware of, I had to make most of these things separately. So let's see if I actually have it handy. So I sculpted his mandolin separately. And I looked at references, and again, I made something that was going to print. So the strings are visible, which is really cool, but they're not really strings. You know, when you turn it, you can see they're rectangles that are sunken into the model so that it prints, gives you the image of strings without actually having the problems of printing strings. So, you know, keep that in mind if you're going to sculpt for your own, or if you're looking at files that you want to buy. How are they accomplishing this image? Now, the most artists now know what to do, but you do want to be careful and make sure it's printable. The other thing that I sculpted independently was this cup, made it mostly full to make it print easier. And again, it's simple, but it's simple on purpose. So there's a couple of strategies when you're sculpting for miniatures. One is to create every single detail, print it out, and people are wowed by your sculpting skill. The other, second principle is to keep it relatively simple and straightforward so you can showcase the painter's skill. So they can do things with paint to make that miniature sing and dance. There's several artists and I guess you'd call them analysts that look at Games Workshop and their Space Marines and similar miniatures, and believe one of the reasons they're so popular is it showcases the painter's skill, not the sculptor's skill. And I try and do a mix of both when I do my sculpts, but that's something to also think about when you see a when you see a miniature you want to buy and paint. Is it going to be something that's simple and easy to paint so that you can put it on the game table and game with? That's going to be sturdy, thumbs up for me. Or is it going to be delicate and you have to be careful with it? There's nothing wrong with that. You just want to know what you're getting. And then, or is it going to have a lot of details that you might not be able to showcase when you paint, or no details and may showcase that you're just putting a base coat on there? Maybe you want the details and you'll use some of the techniques we talked about last week, uh, shading, highlighting, washes, to bring out the miniature details so it looks really cool, but it relied more on that painting technique versus your artistic talent. So those are things to keep in mind when you are buying a miniature for yourself. How are you going to use it? You know, what skill do you have when you're painting and things like that. So for this particular model, while there's plenty of detail of the human form, you know, all the muscle definition is there, the facial expression is there. So he looks really cool when you print him. But at the end of the day, it's um, uh, up to you whether you add patterns to his vest or turn his, uh, you know, waist scarf sash thing, you know, and make it like a tartan. I mean, all kinds of things you could do because I didn't sculpt in those details. And so let's see if I can find him to show you a painted version. So real quick, here's my version. So I gave him stripes. I did a simple tartan on his waistband there. And it looks okay. I mean, the camera is certainly zoomed in really close to see. And so let me try another screen because I have yeah, here we go. I have him with me. And this is one of the reasons I had to change my studio, is because I have another camera set up. And let's see if we can do it for some reason, let me turn it. There we go. So here's how he looks painted, and you can see, in my opinion, seeing him in real life, he looks a lot cooler than the photograph. And so he shows up on the table and he looks really, really cool. So I'll hold him, try and hold him steady. I don't think this one, you can kind of see his eyes. So we talked about painting eyes last week. I am totally shaking. See if I can get the camera to focus. There you go. You can see his eyes. And I'm since I've got this camera set up, I'm going to do some painting and show you guys um, how I paint, and it's really straightforward. So let me switch back to my. There we go. So you can see how the inspiration of. Oh yeah, I'm going to talk about him in a second too. Let me get back to Pura. The inspiration of this handsome bard turned into a miniature, and how I had to think through, what else I was going to do with this character besides just that widow's peak, the beard, and the casual holding of the um, stringed instrument across his back. But this guy was a ton of fun, was super inspired. And in fact, this miniature and the concept of Alfabio goo led to the creation of a whole nother miniature. And you'll see how similar they look when I pull this up. Let's see if I can find them real quick. No, he's not there. There it is. So here you go. Let's see. Why is he showing two vests? Let me turn one off. There we go. So you can see what I did here, right? So I have him in color, and so if I render him, you can see why I wanted it to be really so I could do digital manipulation of this character. He's got colors on him, but it's the same shorts, the same sash around his waist. He's holding a cup, and he's got the same mandolin um, stowed on his back. Right, even that particular vest is the same, but I think I replaced it with this vest to be more dramatic, or maybe a combination of the two when I printed them out. But the concept was that there's the Alphinius Goo, the famous wizard, has a brother who's a storyteller and a writer and a bard, and he travels the world, making a name for himself. And so I gave him kind of a little beer belly, gave him the pointy shoes because these are the same shoes that Alphinius's miniature has. These pointy shoes, and then of course the face is definitely modeled on. Let's see if I can get it to zoom in. It's modeled on the Alphinius Goo sculpt I have, and then I just gave him this flowing blonde hair and a big, big smile. So the advantage of digital sculpting versus sculpting physically with putty is I can do things like this. So this is what you might call a kit bash, where I took the handsome bard miniature and the Alphinius miniature and merged them together. So he didn't have pink hair when I started. That was added later. The illustration shows him with pink hair. When I did this, he had this yellow hair, but if we want it to be pink, let's see, where is his hair? Let's see. Oh, that actually looks good. There, he now has pink hair. Does that work for everybody? So now he has pink hair. So I can save this version that he has this really, really wild pink hair. I don't remember if his beard was pink or not, so I'll leave that alone for now. So anyway, this was a kit bash. The other thing that I can do when I'm working with miniatures, if I sculpt a bow, more commonly though, it's the arrows in a quiver. And the arrows in a quiver, I can reuse multiple times because this is a digital product and then I print it where I want it. And if you are a subscriber to um, Patreons or other places where you get STL files of miniatures, you'll often find month to month um, that they use similar figures and model uh, bases, like the character in armor, and they just change the head, or maybe even just change the pose, which I can do. It's a little bit harder. My workflow makes it harder to change the pose, but some people are very, very good at digital modeling, and they do it for games and stuff, and they end up with the ability. Let's see. Now his whole face changes. So if I was to make his beard pink, I'd have to do some more work. But anyway, he's now a pink-haired guy, and this is Alfabio. I want to save this just in case I need it. All right. So another character that was inspired by the art that I wanted to show everybody is this one. Bottom, I think is his name. He's a halfling gangster in the city of Darkenhaven, and this art was shared with us several months ago. And I thought that's really cool. And there aren't a lot of halfling miniatures that are unique. They're very generic looking that I have found. Now that's changing as digital sculpting becomes bigger and bigger. It allows for much more options for everybody. And so I decided I wanted to make this guy. Now there's other characters that have been shown that are part of this gang. I haven't done those or been inspired by those, but this one was a lot of fun to do. Oh, I need to change my colors back because I'm going to bring this guy up. So the first thing I did, and you can see all I did was his head. And so because I wanted that detail, right? So you can see I've got the scar across his face. I can even zoom in a little bit more. I've got the scar across his face. I've really captured his expression. The beard even have pockmarks in his face that could show up in printing. I'm not sure they have. And of course the hat, which is a big part of his character, the way he's wearing it, right? So if I put it normally and render this, it's going to shade his face, right? It's going to be a shadow. So that's normally why I have it tilted up. So once I had this and was happy with it and I really liked it, and I'm like, okay, now what? Because you see this character in an action pose in the art, but you don't really see anything besides this poncho or whatever he's wearing. And so I'm like, okay, what do I do? And I created this pose. So I made it not a poncho. He's got this fur lined cloak or cape, and he's got the crossed straps across his chest with medallions holding everything together. He's got textured pants that I did, and these leather boots. And I gave him a rapier, figuring he's a rogue, right? So this is the character. And again, if I go to, let's see, do I call him Bottom? I think I use his first name, and I don't remember his first name. Give me a moment, I'll find him. I think I'll find him. There it is. Bandifer. Let's make his name as complicated as possible. And so then there he is. So you can see he's only 25 millimeters tall. So he's pretty small. And here's some multiple angles of the print. And you can see his nose, his expression, and his beard. They do show up pretty well. The texture on his leggings, they show up. And oh, these are renders, so they're not showing it. But here's another angle showing his height. Um, I printed him again. Here's a picture of his paint job. Um, at least one of the versions. I think I printed them out a couple of times. And you can see the eyes came out okay. You don't really see the freckling. I'm not sure. Maybe if I used a different paint technique, I could have gotten the freckling to show up in his face. But it is actually there. And then again, let me jump to my other camera and show everybody a painted version of this character. Let's see if I can get him steady. Here we go. So you can see he turns out really good when he prints. And yeah, with that angle, you can see even the eyes. So at a close-up view, you've got a pretty neat looking miniature. And I used very, very simple painting techniques that I'll be showing in a week or two, and to get this look. And so it was not very difficult to paint this guy. In fact, I think it was everything except his blade and part of his face were a single coat of paint using the speed paint techniques we talked about. So very, very slick miniature, and really like how he turned out. So let me get back to where we were. So that is that particular character inspiration. So I'm going to get out of or not show Pure Ref anymore and just show you guys some other. We've seen him already. Oh, here's a good one. So here's another one that was inspiring. Now this is much like Alphinius. It's an illustration based on a real person. The character's name is Zixgramus, something along those lines. He pronounces it a very specific way, but I just loved the uniqueness of this character. I'd never seen, this before. Now, yes, it's based on things we know and tropes we're aware of, but still very, very great character. And the nice thing about how I operate is I rarely do commissions anymore. I do some for Alphinius and for GUI Cube, but most of the time I pick the what interests me and what inspires me and turn it into a miniature. And so the people that get to see their character in miniature form, I know is super fun. I just can't do all of them. There's about 300 illustrations now of real people as part of the GUI Cube family, and I've done about 60. I can't keep up. In fact, I'm working on 6 right now as a commission, and I'm behind, right? I got 1 approved. I got 5 more to get approved. But anyway, enough about my problems. Let's take a look at this really, really cool character. And it was much more straightforward to create this guy because he's wearing robes, and robes are generally going to go all the way to the floor. And so I was able to do a pretty simple job of the robes that you could create. And then the other thing I wanted to show real quick is resolution of your image. Let's see if it'll show. Is based on squares and triangles in the software, but a printer or 3D printer can't process too many. Like if I had a 10 million point miniature, it would look amazing here in ZBrush, but the printer couldn't actually handle it to print. It can't process that many points. So you have to strike a balance between the number of points, pixels, whatever language you want to use, and the capacity of modern printing software and technology. And so it gets bigger, but there's some other challenges. And so what you want to do is be able to get just enough to accomplish your goals. So you can see on screen his little scarf is pretty blocky, but when it prints, you don't notice it. And I'll show you the print in a few minutes. But I was able to get his face and expression really clean. His helmet with the wings, his crown or whatever it's called, and he has a skeletal dragon in his hand. Now, the other thing I can show you as I zoom in on the dragon, his wings look wonky. Well, that's because the dragon itself is maybe 5 millimeters, and so and it's got this tail, and it was breaking constantly. The wings weren't even printing correctly, so I made them super thick so they'd print. But when you look at the miniature, and I'm going to jump to the photo here in a second, it actually comes out really slick. The one thing you don't really see is this really cool finger um, jewel thing he's got, where he slid his finger into this silver jewel. I don't think that shows very well in the print, but his necklace does. And if we look at his illustration, there's the skeletal dragon. He's got the ornamental jewelry for his finger, and then he has that symbol on his neck. I made the symbol bigger and thicker because it's being printed. And so there's things that you have to do. The clothes have to have thickness, where in reality, like this wonderful shirt I'm wearing, if the GM smiles, it's already too late. There's almost no thickness to it, right? Well, that's not going to print very well. It also would be struggling for you to paint and know the difference between my neck and the shirt. So you give it thickness because you're printing it. And so let me get you the photo so you guys can take a look. Actually, I'm going to do the live. So if I pull up Zix Gramoose, you can see that thickness of the wing hardly shows in the printout. It's like it's part of the wing, and the tail printed. And the way I got it to work, frankly, is I print the hand and the dragon as a separate part from the rest of the body, and then it prints really clean, right? And you can see, if I get too much closer, it doesn't like to focus. You can see his eyes turned out pretty good. I've painted the finger. I'm not sure the texture really shows all that well. I just knew that it was there because I sculpted it. And then, as I mentioned, the blocky scarf doesn't look blocky in print. And I did paint a zigzag design on it just to give it more interest, because it's a black robe, like the character. So I like my camera to be able to show you guys how it really looks when you're seeing it. This is very close to what the human eye is going to be able to see on this miniature, and you can see everything. I'm not the best painter in the world, far from it, but I get really good results. In fact, this is using a lot of the speed paints, the contrast paints from Games Workshop, which go fast. Okay. Any questions from anyone else besides the pink hair of Alfabio? Okay, I'm just going to show a couple of more of the inspirations and what I did and choices I made. So that's Zix Gramoose. Let's find another really fun one. Oh, here's one that I really enjoy doing. This is Michael. He's part of the GUI family. And I got this really great expression. Even, I think he's supposed to be half elf. I'm not sure, with the two blades. And all you got was this shoulder up view. So what's the rest of this character going to be like? Well, I got to make that up. It was Harry's choice, right? And so, yeah, his boots, that's the most important. There we go. So now you can see I got this happy-go-lucky guy, two scabbards on his back, one with a sword in it, and then the other one he's leaning on. So it was this great pose that I think really sells this character. And I didn't do, this isn't very much like what you see in the 3/4 view. I gave him just this chain shirt. Chainmail is the bane of my existence, so it does read as chainmail. I've come up with some newer techniques that I can use to make chainmail a little more fun. But he has this textured leather or chainmail armor shirt. He's got textured leggings. He's got a fun little design on his knife scabbard. And so there's lots of fun details, but there's still some stuff for you to do if you're a painter that wants to spend extra time on it. And he turned out really, really well. What's interesting is this digital image looks goofy. The sword looks really big. The scabbards look ginormous, right? And part of that is I'm very, very familiar with what it's going to look like when it's printed. I don't print true scale. A lot of things I do, like his head is probably bigger than it should be for his body because it'll read better at 30 millimeters to 35 millimeters tall. And so I wanted to show you guys the real miniature. So I'm going to switch again. And let's take a look at Michael, right? You get this cool pose, which is the biggest part of this miniature. It doesn't, and then he's got a fun face with his beard, his eyebrows, that hair, and then he's got these scabbards on his back. They're a little bit big, but they fit this large sword that he leans on, and that was very important to me as a sculptor. Let's see if I can get a little closer and hold still. Doesn't want to focus for some reason. There we go. Pause. And you can see how good he looks. And he just on the table, not even this close up, when you can keep him in focus. The way I've got it designed is it'll focus really close, but not far away. It's the way I had to design that camera. So he looks really, really good on the table, and you read the pose, you can imagine his expression, and then when you look at it close, you do see the expression because the pose was so successful. And I just really love making that character, and I know the person who I sculpted this of got a real good kick out of it too. Trying to move and keep us on schedule here. So here we have Seamus, another character that I really, really like, the swashbuckler. And this guy has a lot of detail. It goes almost to his waist, so you can see what's around his neck. There's multiple levels of information. He's wearing different kind of stuff. And he's got this hat that's just dying to be sculpted. And so I decided I would. And let's see if I can find him. Oh, that's 6 gramos. Where'd he go? Did I not? I don't have him. Oh, there he is. Whew. So let me zoom out. And again, I put him in a pose. And he turned out slick. I really like how he turned out. So if other people don't like him, too bad, so sad. I love this guy. So the hat was a big part of it, and I made the feathers even bigger, partially because I needed them to print, and partially because it just made that look so much more dramatic. And even from that front on view where he's trying to make himself as a fencer, as small of a target as possible. And so he's in that fencing pose and looks really, really strong. And he's got the scarf, he's got the buckles on his vest, he's got, a tunic. I don't have every single detail from the illustration, but I did get a textured collar, and he just prints really, really nice. And I gave him a sword with a very textured handguard, like a fencing saber or fencing rapier. And I had to make the blade a unique shape because I needed it to survive printing and gameplay. And I'm going to jump really quick to the image of this guy. And again, he printed out really nice. So hopefully I can get the camera to zoom in. So here you can see the feathers in his hair for his hat. You can see it shines that the hat has that symbol on it. There's texture to his collar. He's got that really nice blade. the fancy boots. And I just painted him really straightforward so you could see, but somebody that wanted to paint designs on his clothes or maybe put something on his back, they could. This one's not very good for tattoos or anything. You don't see much of his skin, but he really, really turned out nice. Swashbuckler. And that's Seamus. And I had a lot of fun with him. And the other one I wanted to show, I'm just going to show the miniature, but he's a Gorund, which is a race specific to Zyathé. They're like half giants in size or Goliaths in size, but they live in the mountains and everything. And this is actually based on an illustration from the Gooey family. And so he's big. Let me see if I can find somebody else. Here's Zixgramoose. So you can see he's almost twice the size. I'll get him zoomed in just a second, but just wanted to see you to see the size. And so he has those stripes are scarification, and he has some on his head too that I put in. Some I couldn't see, so I had to invent. And then he has some on his back, almost like wings. But again, you can paint his skirt and his shawl with a tartan or some other kind of pattern, and he's got a really cool axe. And this is a character that I was inspired to do. His Gooey Lawrence is a member of the Gooey family, and he was deployed. And I thought it would be fun to do his miniature as a thank you for your service. And I did this one, and the family appreciated it too. He turned out really, really neat. And the other one I'm going to show is one I did recently, and his name is Winest. This is the character that's in the Legends, Lore, and Libations book. He's the character it's written about, and he has these pets. He's got this beautiful horse. I sculpted this wolf and dog, half wolf, half dog, and this little bitty dimensional slinker on his leg. You can kind of see it's got like a mustache, and then of course he's a half orc. Yeah, in this light, I can't show it really well. I'll have to work on my lighting for next time. There we go. And you can see he turned out really, really well. He's got a rifle. He's got a sword on his back, and I could have put a rifle on him now that I think about it. That would have been cool. And he's carrying this axe. So it's based on his illustration. Let me show you his illustration because I'm not going to go back to that camera again because we're going to be wrapping up here in a second. Let's see his illustration. So this is what I based his illustration on, or his sculpt on. So it was one of the first illustrations that was a full body illustration from Gooey Cube. And so I got his whole costume. And then there's the wolf. I didn't paint it like this dog. Thinking about it, I probably could have done a better job of that. And then his horse. And then on his back, you can see the dimensional slinker is a creature from the world of Zyathé. And I put it along his leg. So he can be done separately with the slinker. So that's one miniature. The horse is another miniature. And of course, the dog wolf is another miniature. And I just put them on the same base because it's a display piece, but you could actually use them separately. So thanks, Shadowborn. I'm glad you like Seamus. He was a nice miniature. And then, hang on. There we go. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to show. I guess you can say here's Lawrence. This is the illustration that inspired that Gorund sculpture. So he's pretty darn cool. And so that's how I take inspiration from an illustration or from an artwork or even from a real life creature and then approach that in the sculpt in ZBrush. And I think that everybody got a pretty clear idea of what I do. And I hope that was interesting for everybody. I hope you got a lot out of this episode and this session. I had a lot of fun sharing. We're going to call that a wrap for today. Thank you for joining me, and I thank you for being part of the Gooey Twitch channel and the Gooey family, and hope to see you next week. Have a great evening. Take care, everybody.